Hello students, let's begin chapter number 4, The Enemy, written by Pearl S. Buck. The Enemy is a very interesting story. It is a heart-rending portrayal of the conflict between a man's heart and mind. It tells us about how people can help enemies on human grounds. To hate our enemy is natural and justifiable, especially during wartime. But this story beautifully depicts how a human being rises above all prejudices to help a wounded enemy. In this chapter, the author stresses on the fact that humanity is above nationality. The author has tried to prove that one requires to overcome prejudices and hatred, especially against one's enemies, when it comes to humanity. So let's begin the chapter. Before you read, it is the time of the World War. An American prisoner of war is washed ashore in a dying state and is found at the doorstep of a Japanese doctor. Should he save him as a doctor or hand him over to the army as a patriot? So here I hope the scene is clear to you that the war is going on, World War is going on, and an American prisoner has been washed ashore and he is in a dying state, he is wounded badly, and he is found at the doorstep of a Japanese doctor. Now the doctor is in a dilemma whether to save this man who's an American, although Japan and America are fighting, are at wars from two different sides. Still, should the doctor save him because he's a doctor, or should he hand him over to the police or the army as a patriot? So, this is quite interesting to know. Dr. Sadao Hoki's house was built on a spot of the Japanese coast where, as a little boy, he had often played. So, this is the background of the story, that how Dr. Sadao was brought up. The low square stone house was set upon rocks well above a narrow beach that was outlined with bent pines. So this Dr. Sadao Hoki's house was near a Japanese coast, sea coast, and there was a line of pine trees near that sea coast. As a boy, when he was a young boy, Sadao the pines, supporting himself on his bare feet, as he had seen men do in the South Seas when they climbed for coconuts. So as coconut trees are too tall, in the same manner pine trees are also too tall, and as people climb upon coconut trees, in the same manner Sadao, when he was young boy, he used to climb upon pine trees. His father had taken him often to the islands of those seas, and never had he failed to say to the little brave boy at his side, "Those islands yonder, they are the stepping stones to the future for Japan." So when he was a child, his father, Sadao's father, had taken him to the sea beach, to the islands very often. And when he goes there, what he would do? His father would tell him, "Those islands yonder," pointing towards the different islands. You might know that Japan is a country of various small islands. So those islands which were visible there, from pointing upon those islands, his father used to say, Those islands there, they are the stepping stones to the future for Japan. That these islands would be the stepping stones, that means these islands would be the reason or would be the you can say would be the helpful resources for the people of Japan to prosper or develop. Where shall we step from them? Sadao had asked seriously. And Sadao, who was a little child, could not understand that. He said, where are we going to step? Where are we going to go when we are stepping upon them? Who knows? His father had answered. Who can limit our future? It depends on what we make it. Quite relevant lines, quite important, quite practical as well. That who can limit our future? Our future is what we make it. Sadao had taken this into his mind as he did everything his father said. His father, who never joked or played with him, but who spent infinite pains upon him, who was his only son. So Sadao's father took a lot of pains, made a lot of efforts to shape his son Sadao. He never laughed at him, he never played jokes with him, but he was always concerned about his son's progress. Sadao knew that his education was his father's chief concern, and his father was chiefly concerned, most important for him was Sadao's education. For this reason, he had been sent at 22 to America to learn all that could be learned of surgery and medicine. So now, when Sadao was 22-year old, he was sent to America to learn about surgery and medicine. That means to become a doctor. He had come back at 30, and before his father died, he had seen Sadao become famous not only as a surgeon but as a scientist. So Sadao's father's wish was fulfilled. Even before his father's death, Sadao had become a famous surgeon and a scientist as well, because he was perfecting a discovery which would render wounds entirely clean. He had not been sent abroad with the troops. So, as the war was going on, Sadao was not sent along with the troops. Reason, he was doing a discovery by which the wounds would become entirely clean. Moreover, he was treating the old general as well, and the general might need an operation anytime. Moreover, the general trusted Sadao a lot. So, these are the two reasons why Sadao had not been sent along with the troops to war. Also, he knew there was some slight danger that the old general might need an operation for a condition for which he was now being treated medically, and for this possibility, Sadao was being kept in Japan. Clouds were rising from the ocean now. So, till now, what you have read is about Sadao's past. Now starts present condition. Is in his house, which is situated near the sea beach, and clouds were rising from the ocean now. The unexpected warmth of the past few days had at night drawn heavy fog from the cold waves. Due to the warm, means rising temperature, the fog was created because the wind was coming from the cold waves. Sarah watched mist hide outlines of a little island near the shore, and then come creeping up the beach below the house, wreathing around the pines. So now Sadao could see that the island, which was visible some moment back, now it has been covered up by the mist, and this fog was coming towards his house and wreathing means covering the pine trees, and in a few minutes fog would be wrapped about the house too. Then he would go into the room where Hannah, his wife, would be waiting for him with the two children. So now he was clear with it that after a few moments, this his house would also be covered by fog, and then he would go inside and uh, inside where he would see his wife Hannah and two children. But at this moment, the door opened and she looked out. But just then, she came out. A dark blue woolen howry over her kimono. Kimono is a Japanese dress, female dress. So she was wearing a kimono, and over that she was wearing a woolen howry. Howry is a shawl kind of garment. So she was wearing a shawl, howry over her kimono. She came to him affectionately and put her arm through his as he stood, smiled, and said nothing. He had met Hannah in America, but he had waited to fall in love with her until he was sure she was Japanese. So again, author is taking us to the past, that how Sadao and Hannah met. Sadao and Hannah, they met at America, sorry. And first he ensured that she was a pure Japanese race. Only then he fell in love with her, because he knew that his father would never accept anybody else than a pure Japanese. His father would never have received her unless she had been pure in her race. He wondered often whom he would have married if he had not met Hannah, and by what luck he had found her in the most casual way, by chance, literally. And he had met Hannah by chance, accidentally, at an American professor's house. The professor and his wife had been kind people, anxious to do something for their few foreign students. And the students, the board, had accepted this kindness. Sadao had often told Hannah how nearly he had not gone to Professor Harley's house that night. The rooms were so small, the food so bad, the professor's wife so voluble. The professor's wife so voluble, but he had gone there. He had found Hannah, a new student, and had felt he would love her if it were at all possible. So here Sadao has stated reason why he did not wish to go to Professor Harley's house, because the rooms were so small, they were so congested, and a lot of people collected there. Moreover, the food which Professor's wife prepared was very bad, and she was very much talkative as well. Voluble means talkative. So he did not like it, and that's why he didn't wish to go there. But then by chance he went there, and there he found Hannah, a new student whom he loved, he liked, and first ensured that she was a pure Japanese so that he could love her. So again, come to the present condition. Presently, you know that Sadao and Hannah, they both are standing in the veranda or the lobby of their house, and from there they were seeing through the mist. Now he felt her hand on his arm and was aware of the pleasure it gave him, even though they had been married years enough to have the two children, for they had not married heedlessly in America. Heedlessly means without paying attention to anything, anybody. They had finished their work at school and had come home to Japan. And when his father had seen her The marriage had been arranged in the old Japanese way. Although Sadao and Hannah had talked everything over beforehand, they were perfectly happy. She laid her cheek against his arm. So, they had not married without caring for anybody or anything. Rather, they both have completed their education there and then they came back to Japan. Sadao's father had met Hannah, and when once he approved, then only they got married in Japan in pure traditional Japanese way. It was at this moment that both of them saw something black come out of the mist. Now that they both were standing in veranda, they could see that something black was coming out of the mist. It was a man. He was flung up out of the ocean. Flung means threw. So, as if it was thrown out of the ocean. It seemed to his feet by a breaker. He staggered a few steps, his body outlined against the mist, his arms above his head. Then the curled mist hid him again. So this man, he was walking lamely, and then they could see that his arms were above his head, means he was in a surrender position, and then the curled mist hid him again. Who was that? Hannah cried. She dropped Sadao's arm and they both leaned over the railing of the veranda. Now they saw him again. The man was on his knees crawling, and now the man could not even walk. He was crawling. Then they saw him fall on his face and lie there. Now he had fallen. A fisherman, perhaps, Sadao said, washed from his boat. Sadao said that it might be a fisherman who had been washed ashore by his boat. He ran quickly down the steps, and behind him Hannah came, her wide sleeves flying. Kimono has wide sleeves. So she also came back, rushed to the place. A mile or two away, on either side, there were fishing villages. So the place where they were living, both sides, there were fishing villages. But here was only the bare and lonely coast, dangerous with rocks. And the place where they lived, at that place, there were spiked rocks on the beach side, on the coast side. The surf beyond the beach was spiked with rocks, pointed rocks were there. Somehow the man had managed to come through them. He must be badly torn. They saw when they came toward him that indeed it was so. The sand on one side of him had already a stain of red soaking through. So, on one side where he was lying, the sand had already become red. It means that the man was wounded. He is wounded, Sadao exclaimed. He made haste to the man. He quickly moved to the man, who lay motionless, his face in the sand, an old cap stuck to his head soaked with sea water. He was in wet rags of garments. Sadao stopped, Hannah at his side, and turned the man's head. They saw the face. A white man, Hannah whispered. So now they could see that this was a white man. Yes, it was a white man. The wet cap fell away, and there was his wet yellow hair, long as though for many weeks it had not been cut, and upon his young and tortured face was a rough yellow beard. He was unconscious and knew nothing that they did for him. That's all for today. The rest of the portion we are going to read tomorrow.